So, in our study of the history of Halakha and the development of Jewish law, we now come to the seminal Teshuvah by Rabbi David Shlush. Zecher Tzaddik Levarcha was the chief rabbi of Netanya, and this is his discussion at the end of Hemda Genuzah, first volume. That was also the discussion that caused a split between him and Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. Remember, I told you that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef refused to give him a letter of approval to the book until he takes out this discussion, because he felt that it undermines his authority and his position. Because one of the main agendas, if not the main agenda, of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was to re-establish the rule of the Shulchan Aruch and to say that all Sephardim, originally even all Ashkenazim, that everybody must follow the Shulchan Aruch of Rabbi Yosef Karo to the letter and not deviate. And Rabbi Shlush was among the rabbis who challenged that, but in a very systematic way. He went and he wrote, starting with, before that, I'm starting with chapter 44 of his discussion. Before that, he discussed the methods of defining halakha in each period and the history of the Mishnah and the Talmud. So now he came sort of to the modern period and asked whether it is allowed. This is the question: אם רשאי קהל לקבל עליו לפסוק כפוסק אחד ככל אשר יאמר בכל ההלכות אין להקל אין להחמיר. Is it okay? Is it allowed for a community to follow the rulings of one rabbi only? To say, we disregard all other authorities and we only adhere to this rabbi, whether he is strict or lenient. It says, ואם תמצא לו מה רשאי, and if you say that they are allowed to do so, אם יכול הקהל בזמן מן הזמנים לחזור בו ולבטל אותה קבלה ומנהג בלי או עם התרת ככל התרת נדר. Once they accepted it upon themselves, is it binding forever, or at a certain point they can rescind it? They say, okay, we're not going to follow it from now on. We did it for 100 years, 200 years, whatever it is, we want to change it. And the question is, when they want to change it, do they have to treat it as a vow, as a neder, and therefore do what we call hatarat nedarim, nullification of vows, or not? Or they could just switch their custom back. So we have many examples like that. Many Moroccans in the past didn't eat rice. Now they eat rice. So was it because of a vow? Did they have to nullify? There are different discussions. It says, "V'chen Rav Kila she'iniged kilato lino keposek echad bechol asher yomar." This is very common today, that you have local rabbis who follow the rulings of a greater rabbi. I'm saying today we have that because in the past rabbis were a little more independent within their communities, and they were the poskim to each community. It's rabbi. Today, because of globalization and also because of the ease of communication, people refer to one book. Also because there were campaigns which tried to impose one book on everyone, especially with the Yalkut Yosef of Haim Ovadia Yosef. It was heavily marketed, just like the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah among the Ashkenazim. There's a book called Mishnah Berurah, which is a commentary of a Hafetz Haim of Rabbi Israel Meir HaKohen on the Shulchan Aruch, only to the first part, the daily practice. Both these books, you could say, took over the Orthodox world. Yalkut Yosef for the Sephardim, Mishnah Berurah for the Ashkenazim. So the rabbis, the local rabbis, when you ask them a question, they don't deal with the situation in front of them, analyzing the fact, but they say, let me see what Yalkut Yosef says. Or if it's Ashkenazi, what the Mishnah Berurah says. So he says, let's say they did that. Let's say a rabbi in a certain community followed, in all of his rulings, he followed one rabbi, one greater rabbi. אם יכול רב קהילה אחר שבא במקומו לאחר מותו לשנות את מנהג קהילתו ולפסוק כפוסק אחר. Says, what about now the next rabbi? The previous rabbi has passed away. Rabbi Shlush is an optimistic. He assumes that the rabbi will hold the position until he dies, and then he will be replaced. That is appropriate, for Israel, really, when the position is for life, and rabbis don't quit or move to another place, but in America it's a little different. So let's say the community now has a new rabbi, for whatever reason. Can they now change their practice and say, okay, the new rabbi follows this custom and we want to go with that rabbi? Is it okay? So that's another question that he wants to discuss. I mean, these are just the premise upon which he's going to build the whole discussion. ואיך נתקבלו הוראות מרן הקדוש בתפוצות ישראל. Here we come to the core of the problem, really a contentious issue, which is when we say that we follow the Shulchan Aruch. How did this happen? Remember, we reviewed the history of Jewish law. There was a period of creativity, then the Mishnah solidified everything. There's another period of creativity during the Talmud, and then the Gaonim sort of had a monopoly over the Talmud. Then Maimonides wrote his book, but it was not widely accepted. People read it, but didn't follow it to the letter. Then in the 1400s, Rabbi Yaakov ben Rabbeinu Asher wrote his book, also not accepted by all. And then in the 1600s, late 1500s, the Rabbi Yosef Karo writes the Shulchan Aruch. That's 500 years ago. And today, people claim we all follow the Shulchan Aruch. He says, how did this happen? For 1500 years or more, there were many different trends and movements, and each one followed a different rule. All of a sudden, we say that we all followed Shulchan Aruch. How did it happen? Was there a decision, a convention, a consensus? נתקבלו בחייו או לאחר פטירתו? Did this happen when he was alive or after he passed away? ואם רב קהילה מפורסם, הנראה לו דעת פוסק אחר מגדולי הפוסקים, אם יכול לפסוק כמותו, או לכל הפחות כדעת יש אומרים שהביא מרן אחרי הסתם. He says now, it's also an important question to know whether a contemporary rabbi who's knowledgeable can rule against the Shulchan Aruch, or at least, rule against Shulchan Aruch relying on a different opinion, or at least if he could rule according to one of the opinions that the Shulchan Aruch quotes. Remember that I said that Rabbi Yosef Karo left many halachot open-ended, but the way he left them open-ended was by citing one of them as anonymous, without citing the source, and the other one would refer to as some people say. So it's called stam v'yesh omrim, meaning, like you said, the halacha. Let's say that. Let's say the Shulchan Aruch writes, one must say the blessing before lighting the candles on Friday night. And some people say you could say it afterwards. So now you're saying, okay, so he said this as an absolute, that's the law, and then he says some people say. So it means that he doesn't rely on that, that's very marginal. And now everybody practiced the first halakha that he mentions. Am I allowed to switch over to the new law? And I'll tell you that I've seen that rabbis today, contemporary rabbis, are afraid to rule or to deviate in any direction, and especially in the Ashkenazi world, I was following the process of interviewing rabbis for a certain synagogue, and the question that they asked the rabbi, they said, "Who's your posek? Who's your halachic authority?" And consistently, all of these rabbis came up with 5 or 6 names. And they would say, in monetary issues, I ask rabbi this and that. On issues of family purity, I refer to this rabbi. In issues of divorces, and I go to this rabbi. In kashrut, I ask this one. In this, and you say at a certain point, wait a second, you're the rabbi. You have to know how to rule. Why do you refer to all that? And that's part of the fear of making a decision and reviewing the sources, which was instilled in the rabbis by their mentors. That, I think, before I get to what Rabbi Shalush writes, this is a failure of the rabbinic system. In the past, when someone was ordained as a rabbi, the idea was, here, you're a rabbi, you're a posek, you have the ordination diploma, the Teudah, go ahead and lead your community. In modern times is, here's your Teudah, and here's my phone number, or today my email, right? If you have a problem, call me. You don't need to know anything. Or even worse, you should not know anything. I was
dependency.
Yeah, dependency, because the rabbis who lead the rabbinical school want to maintain their monopoly over halakha. It happened, so we will see, when Haim Ovadia Yosef was challenged by one of his own students who graduated and became a posek on his own, Rabbi Eliyahu Tawfiq, and it was not really a serious question. The question was, if you forgot to count the Omer and you remember the next day a little after sunset, could you still keep counting? And there was a debate between them. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef destroyed his disciple. He said he never learned, he knows nothing, he's like a na'ar ba'ar, ifwah shalom nitpathu einav, lo nifresu knafav, he's like a chicken that broke out of the egg, didn't open its wings, didn't open its eyes. Wow, it was really very... but on a milder note, I used to teach in I used to teach in a rabbinical school. I was asked to teach a course on Sephardic halakha. And I'll tell you, the Ashkenazi schools, and even I'll tell you what it is. The Sephardic halakha is like a curiosity. Come and teach us a little bit about your nice customs, your exotic tunes, your special flavors. But that halakha is Ashkenazi. We just want the little decorations that you could offer. And I spoke to them as I speak here that the Sephardic halakha was always very creative, very modern, very courageous. Fine. And they was right. I was teaching a whole semester, and then at a certain point in the class, one of the students who was Sephardic came to me and asked the question. He says, I wanted to know, whom do you think I should follow as a posek, as a halachic authority, after I graduate? I said, after you graduate, you are the posek. You are the halachic authority. The head of the institution was next to me. He says, yes, you'll be a posek, but not with a capital P, with a small p. Meaning you're second rate. And that's where we have the problem. So this is just, background to understand that. So we have a serious problem here. And, maybe we'll conclude that today with just one statement from the Mishnah, Pirkei Avot, that really sort of shows the path that we should have taken. The first Mishnah in Pirkei Avot opens with the statement of Anshe Knesset Gdola, the members of the Great Assembly, that are considered the beginning of the new chain of tradition after Ezra Sofer and after the people came back from Babylonia after the exile. They said הם אמרו שלושה דברים, right? הבו מתונים בדין, והעמידו תלמידים הרבה, ועשו סייג לתורה. So the first and the last we'll deal with in another occasion. But the middle one, they say, והעמידו תלמידים הרבה. Many people translate that as you have to produce many students, which is definitely a blessing. The more students you have, some of them will be capable, and some of them will become scholars and leaders for the new generation. But they didn't say teach many students. They didn't even say produce. Asu talmidim arbe. They say ha'amidu talmidim la'amid, to make stand. What does it mean to make stand? The rabbis of the Great Assembly said a talmid is not self-standing. Outstanding and self-standing. Says in order for your talmid to really be your talmid, he has to become independent, to stand on his own two feet and not ask you for. And if you didn't do that, it's not a talmid. So this is just the beginning of trying to look at the word of halakha today. Yeah. Ken. Yeah.
So Rabbi, so the question is, in today's day and age, who is legitimately posek?
That's a good question. So there is a course that people take that could last 4 to 7 years, where they get ordination. and mostly they review the laws of Shabbat and the laws of Isur Veter and the laws of Nida. Those are the three main ones. They do in other things. If one wants to be a Dayan, he also studies the laws of monetary laws and divorces and all that. But even all these courses do not guarantee that the person will be a posek, because he could stick with this mentality of, I'll just tell you what the generations before me said.
Right.
To be a posek, one has to have a sort of free and independent spirit, like Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, like Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, like Rabbi David Shlush, like Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. But the problem is that some of their disciples kept promoting the idea that there's no one like them. But I think we have a new emerging generation that will come through.
So there is a problem here in the Rabbanut, which is basically to organize it so that people know what is a posek and what is not a posek.
Right.
Because now we're living through the reputation of these people.
Right.
So you said, well, no, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef says this, Lichtenstein says this, Feinstein says this.
Each one, right.
So it creates confusion.
Right. That's why I'm teaching this class. Part of it is to make people understand the halachic methodology and to know how to ask questions. So when you ask the rabbi, what should I do? And he says, this is the halacha. And you ask, is this your decision? Do you base it on other sources? And you're allowed to ask the rabbi, are there any other opinions? If the rabbi says there are no other opinions, you go search for it until you.
Always other opinions.
Yeah, and then sometimes you say, okay, it doesn't really matter. Like I said, bracha here, bracha there, it's all valid. But there are questions that are life and death. Saving life on Shabbat, bioethical, etc. Baruch Adonai, le'olam, amen, ve'amen.